Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Pfizer Incorporated today released the following statement to address public comments that allege there are issues in the production and distribution of the company's COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer is not having any production issues with our COVID-19 vaccine, and no shipments containing the vaccine are on hold or delayed. This week, we successfully shipped all 2.9 million doses that we were asked to ship by the U.S. government to the locations specified by them. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but as of now, we have not received any shipment instructions for additional doses. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but we get shipment directions from the U.S. government, and they haven't given us any shipment instructions for what we should do with the millions of doses that we have just sitting here. More than 3,000 Americans are dying every day now. And the vaccine that keeps people from dying from this thing is piled up in a warehouse. And that's per the company that makes it, so they're in a position to know. And they say the reason their doses of vaccine are piled up in a warehouse is because the government won't tell them where they want these doses shipped, and they have no idea why the government isn't telling them that. They're ready to go. And what's actually happening around the country now is this. And we've pulled together these reports from all over the country because we started noticing them coming in this morning, but then it started to feel like just like a cascade today. Starting in one state here, well, it felt like it was a problem with that one state. Oh, maybe it's two states. Wait, that's a state in a different part of the country. We just watched these come in one after the other, and it is starting to feel like this is maybe everywhere now. Look, the Des Moines Register, quote, Iowa will receive less COVID-19 vaccine than anticipated. The state was expecting, in fact, they had publicly announced they'd be getting 172,000 vaccine doses by the end of December. They now say they've been told they'll get 30% less than that. So do the math. That means 50,000 doses that aren't coming, 50,000 people who are not getting the shot in Iowa. In a press release, the Iowa Department of Public Health made clear that they were told that by the federal government. It was the federal government that told them, hey, Iowa, what you thought you were getting, it's going to be 30% less. Then it was the Boston Globe reporting on Rhode Island. Rhode Island getting, quote, far less vaccine than expected next week. Quote, with 36% fewer doses on the way, Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo calls on the Trump administration to honor its commitments and provide the full allocation. In Rhode Island, they were previously told they'd get 10,725 doses next week. Now, instead, inexplicably, they're going to get less than 7,000. All those thousands of people that aren't going to get inoculated. Then Michigan, 30% fewer doses than they expected. They thought they'd get 84,000 people shots next week. Sorry, 24,000 of those, you're not getting your shot. They're not coming. The doses aren't arriving. I mean, yeah, who are you going to tell first who thought they were getting one next week who now isn't going to get one? Then Kansas, 37% cut in what they were told they were getting. They were told to plan for 28,000 Pfizer vaccinations next week. Now it will have to be less than 18,000 because for some reason, that's all that's coming. Same in Missouri. The governor says he's been told it'll be a 25 to 30% cut in their vaccines. Same in Indiana. Same in Maryland. Same in Nebraska. Same in New Hampshire. Same in Montana. Same in Oregon. What's going on? In Washington state, Governor Inslee explained it directly online as best he could. He said this: CDC has informed us that Washington state's vaccine allocation will be cut by 40% next week, and that all states are seeing similar cuts. This is disruptive and frustrating. We need accurate, predictable numbers to plan and ensure on-the-ground success. No explanation was given. Again, we're not like deep into this process. This is week one. Why is this happening? Pfizer says it made all its targets. It has millions of doses on the shelves. They have no production problems. They have no supply line problems. Pfizer says they just need the U.S. government to say where to send the doses that they've got. The government is making these mealy, unsourced allegations that there's some problem on Pfizer's end, but they won't really say what it was other than like casting vague aspersions at Pfizer. And the company says they're lying with what they're implying there. Nevertheless, Trump administration officials are calling all the states now, or at least a lot of the states, and telling them, 30 to 40% of the vaccine doses you were expecting next week, we're cutting those. You're not getting them. Here was Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois today, asked about it by reporters with honestly no way to explain what's happening here.
Have you learned anything more? I know the folks at Pfizer are saying it's not on their end. Anything new?
They have not provided us with any information, federal government. We get to see what the order book can look like for us for the coming week, and they haven't given us any explanation of why those numbers are smaller than they were before.
No explanation of why the numbers are suddenly dramatically smaller than they were before. No explanation. Just tens of thousands of Americans who might not have to die being put at inexplicable risk of it while vaccine that's good to go sits on the shelves with nowhere to go because the federal government won't tell the company that makes and stores that vaccine where they should ship it. And the federal government can't or won't say what's going on and why they're doing that. The Washington Post today had good aggressive reporting on this, and they got this today from the Pfizer side, which is one of the more unnerving things I've read in a few days. According to the Washington Post, quote, a person involved in the planning who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the situation, said Pfizer executives are baffled that the administration is not immediately distributing all of its vaccine, instead leaving much of it on the shelves. It really seems like this is not some sort of fight between Pfizer and the government, some sort of negotiation that's fallen through, and this is some hardball tactic. It really seems like Pfizer's ready to send the vaccine, and the U.S. government won't tell them where to ship it. Pfizer executives are baffled that the administration is not immediately distributing all of its vaccine.
It is Friday, the 18th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Indeed we are. Well, we deserve those French 77s that are the feature here in Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We made it to the weekend. And the French 77, though it be the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails, is a very potent spirit, so do take care. But you'll probably want to sip a bit because we will have a big news block this weekend, as all the weekends have been since this guy took over. Yeah, well, at least he's going out the way that he came in. And I think it's with a little bit of help from Vlad. Yeah. I don't know. Now, I do have somewhat of a pertinent question. Now that Trump has given Vlad the nuke codes, are they good now? Has Trump paid off his debt, or is there still more that Vlad wants. That's the problem. You know, when you owe somebody like Vlad, they want more. So you think that you've paid them, but they want more. And then you pay that more, and they want more. Looks like Russia's been roaming around in all of our government since at least March with impunity. Looks like he was given the keys by one guy in the Oval Office because, you know, he's got the ability to do it. Not that he has the wherewithal, but he has the ability, so he might have had a little bit of help. And Vlad is just doing the work that he set out to do, and that's pretty much destroy America, you know? Why else would he choose somebody like Trump to take over? If anybody's going to be able to bankrupt America, why not get the guy who was the only guy in history to bankrupt a bunch of casinos? Not just one, but a bunch. All right, well, Trump owes Vlad big time, and I don't think that he's ever going to stop owing. That's the problem with dealing with mobsters. It is a big problem, and that's why you don't deal with mobsters. But Trump was dealing with mobsters for a long time. That's how he was able to float the funds for his weird high-rises in New York with the Italian mob money. When that went dry because of bankrupting casinos in Atlantic City, the Italian mob said, we're not giving you any more money. So he had to go to the New York Russian mob. And wouldn't you know it, the New York Russian mob, for some reason, has really strong and close ties with Vladimir Putin. Fancy that. And now here we are. By all accounts, the gravest intelligence breach in the history of the United States. We are not under a cyber attack. This is an act of war. Vladimir Putin declared war on us. I know you can call it asymmetrical warfare, which sounds like not real warfare. It is real. All right? Just because cities are not being bombed doesn't mean they won't be ever, but we don't even have to go there. Once they start messing around with the electric grid, which they've already done, once they've started messing around with our water systems, which some suspect that they've already done, and all of the other parts of our government and our infrastructure, to me, that's carpet bombing. Those are planes flying overhead, dropping bombs on cities. We are under attack. We are in a war. When 9/11 started and we saw the first plane fly into the World Trade Center, we thought that that's a weird accident. Feels weird, but what a weird accident. Then when the second one flew in, we said terror. That is an act of terror. And then when Flight 93 crashed into the Pennsylvania countryside, and was it Pennsylvania or Minnesota? Regardless, when it crashed, and another jet flew into the Pentagon one was where I and a lot of other people said, we are in a war. And that's where we are right now. We need to wrap our heads around it. So when we have people like Ron Johnson spewing Russian talking points and propaganda in Congress, you know, there is a law against that. I don't care if they have implied immunity because they're electeds. Electeds can't just start fighting for the other side. They have an oath that they need to uphold to the Constitution of the United States. Working for Vlad is not protecting the Constitution of the United States. Why are they still in office? Because you have a Vichy collaborating GOP. And I'm a broken record. I know. I apologize. But it is all coming to a head now. All that NRA laundered Russian money handed out to every single Republican in government. I would say even down to city council levels in many cases. The GOP is dirty with the money from a hostile foreign power. No wonder they don't want their taxes released. No wonder they do the most crazy things that doesn't make any political sense. Except when you owe a mobster, you do crazy things. Well, we're at the point now where the Pfizer vaccine, which I got to say, just to keep that volatile, has to be in a science fiction type cold room refrigerator. The type of temperatures that you would see in the Outer Rim when the Nostromo went to pick up the alien and bring it back for, some war research. Really cold out there. And that's the kind of cold that the Pfizer vaccine needs. And, not necessarily my favorite. But then we started hearing rumblings of Moderna getting fast-tracked, and it looks like they may be starting jabbing arms next week. And then suddenly, as Rachel broke it down at the top there, Pfizer has all this vaccine, millions of doses, millions, just sitting there with no place to go. Makes one think that possibly the Trump administration has some pretty deep investments in Moderna. They bought a bunch of stock in Moderna, and maybe that's why the Pfizer vaccine shipments have been cut back so drastically. California, you're only going to get about 40% of what you were expecting. Too bad. So it's a win-win. Stock in Moderna, and you get to kick all those Democratic blue states that thought they were going to get the vaccine. That's how you show them the way out. What's on the rest of the menu here? Starting off in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a federal judge blocked a GOP effort to get rid of ballot drop boxes ahead of the U.S. Senate runoff races in Georgia. I would say that those Senate races are happening right now, but hey, the Trump administration will hand Florida the authority to develop the wetlands just weeks before Joe Biden takes office. And Florida, of course, has less regulatory controls than the U.S. government. And in a rare win for science, the Supreme Court, that Supreme Court, rejected a religious school's challenge to Kentucky's coronavirus shutdown order. Wow. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Iran said it is not necessary to strike a new deal when the U.S. rejoins the Six-Nation Agreement after Joe Biden takes office. And after Macron tested positive for COVID, scores of European leaders he met in France in the last few days have rushed to get tested. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right-ish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could possibly send us the equivalent of what you might spend for an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars, pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting this neo-fascist, seditious takeover of our country, and fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And we thank you for your generosity. And we also thank those who have upped their monthly contribution in this time of peril and during the holiday season. Thank you. Getting ready to finalize the rounds of machinery purchases that we need to replace the workhorse machinery that has been working like horses for over 4 years now in this 10-year run of Resistance Radio. And we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to do so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it's so simple. Tom takes care of it, and you can find us at Netroots Radio. That's how simple it is. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Now, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. So you could get the show notes and links diary right at Daily Co's. Or you could find it when I link it up on various social media sites like Twitter. So there you go. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. There's a lot of us there, too. A lot of us. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It comes out of the American Independent, and it is by Emily Singer. A federal judge in Georgia yesterday, Thursday, dismissed a lawsuit from Georgia Republicans who are trying to ban the use of ballot drop boxes in the state's critical January 5 Senate runoff elections. Judge Randall Hall, a G.W. Bush appointee, said the runoff elections are already underway, and thus the rules cannot be changed. And the Republicans are saying, no, we're Republicans. We can do whatever we want. Rules, that's for little people. Early voting in the state began on Monday, and hundreds of thousands of people have already cast votes. We are not on the eve of an election. We are, as it relates to this particular election, we are closing in on halftime, Hall said in a ruling from the bench. The lawsuit, seeking to ban the use of ballot drop boxes, is one of 3 cases Republicans have brought to try to make voting harder in the upcoming January 5 runoff elections. Aside from trying to ban drop boxes for absentee ballots, the lawsuit also seeks to change the rules for signature verification on absentee ballots. Now, the outcome of those runoff elections will determine control of the Senate, and GOP incumbents David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are facing tough challenges from Democrats John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, respectively. The lawsuits seeking to make it harder to vote come after Trump lost re-election last month, with President-elect Joe Biden notching a 306 to 232 electoral college victory. Biden flipped Georgia blue, becoming the first Democrat to win the state's 16 electoral college votes for the first time since 1992, when a Southern governor won the election in that year. I wonder who that was. Oh, Bill Clinton. Losing Georgia has enraged Trump, who is demanding that his GOP governor, Brian Kemp, overturn the results based on lies about voter fraud. Those lies have led to violent threats against Georgia election officials. Ultimately, the GOP has admitted it believes the easier it is to vote, the worse it is for their party. Well, we already know that. For example, Rand Paul on Thursday yesterday said he's concerned that notifying infrequent voters that they can vote by mail could cause the 2 Georgia Republicans to lose. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Now, what was it when all those maggots who never voted before came out and voted in 2016? What about those votes, buddy? Even before the 2020 election began, Republicans waged a war on voting rights, filing numerous lawsuits seeking to make it harder to vote, and those efforts failed. Now, Republicans are lying about voter fraud and using those lies to justify making it harder to vote. This one effort in Georgia has failed, but voting rights advocates expect the GOP to continue trying to restrict voting rights in the wake of Trump's 2020 defeat. Bobby Kana-Calvin of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The federal government granted Florida's request for wider authority over wetland development, a move announced yesterday, Thursday, that came under immediate fire by environmentalists who worry that the country's largest network of wetlands could be at risk of being further degraded. The announcement by the EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler was long sought by developers and Republican allies who argued that the layers of regulatory scrutiny were cumbersome, expensive, and unnecessary. Actually, they're cumbersome and expensive because they are necessary. Supporters touted the move as a step that would streamline the permitting process when property owners seek to develop wetlands. Oh, nice. During a news conference in Washington, Wheeler said that the state had met the high bar necessary to assume the role of handling the permit process. By taking over this permit program, Florida will be able to integrate its dredging and fill permitting with their traditional water quality and monitoring programs, he said. Oh, really? At around statehood in 1845, the state had about 20 million acres of wetlands. By 1996, Florida had lost nearly half of that because of dredging, draining, and filling. The state's population growth has spawned a boom in development, which has prompted much of that destruction. Florida accounts for about a fifth of the country's wetlands and includes the Everglades among the state's most important environmental jewels. A massive restoration project costing billions of dollars is currently underway to repair the damage to the Everglades, including the draining of huge swaths of its marshes. Wetlands serve as a key role in the ecosystem, including in helping maintain water quality and absorbing floodwaters from hurricanes. From Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday rejected a religious school in Kentucky that is challenging the state's decision to limit in-school instruction as part of its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The action by the justices is a loss for Danville Christian Academy. The school said the order violated its religious rights under the First Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees the free exercise of religion. The justices, in a brief order, said that the school closing order effectively expires this week or shortly thereafter, and there is no indication that it will be renewed, but indicated that the school could renew its legal challenge if another closure is announced in the new year. Two conservative justices, Alito and Gorsuch, dissented from the court's decision. I would not leave in place yet another potentially unconstitutional decree even for the next few weeks, Gorsuch wrote, entirely dismissing science. But that's Gorsuch for you. The case pits Kentucky's Democratic Governor Andy Beshear against the Republican Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who joined the legal fight against the order. Beshear's November order required all schools, public and private, to close for in-school instruction. Some elementary schools would be able to reopen if COVID-19 rates decrease. The order was discriminatory, the school said, because other types of activities and indoor gatherings have been allowed to continue. Child daycare centers and universities are open, as are gyms and bowling alleys, with some restrictions. Houses of worship are also open. Beshear's lawyers counter that the order, aimed to combat a spike in coronavirus infections, treats all schools the same and does not target religion. A federal judge in Kentucky ruled in favor of the school on November 25th, but the Cincinnati-based 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals prevented that ruling from going into effect. Well, a win for science after all. Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Life Ahead. That's the title of the new film helmed by the legendary Sophia Loren and directed by her son, Eduardo Ponte, about two outsiders coming together. In the wrong hands, trite sentimentality would await, but Loren and Ponte managed to take this theme and make a film that is intelligent, touching, and timely. Loren's Madame Rosa, a Holocaust survivor turned sex worker turned foster mother, is a complex character who maintains a sense of dignity, even when it comes to dealing with unruly charges and the pitfalls of old age. Supporting her is the young Ibrahima Guy, playing Momo, a Senegalese refugee who first meets Rosa after he attempts to steal from her. A local doctor who has been caring for Momo bribes Rosa to add him to her brood. Rosa, along with the kids and a trans woman who lives in the apartment below, form a family of sorts, reinforcing one of the movie's themes. That family can be more about the people with whom you choose to associate than about biological relations. As the audience learns more about Momo and Rosa, one thing becomes clear. Trauma has deep and lasting impacts on people and who they can trust. The fact that these two can trust anyone, much less each other, is a triumph, even though Ponte is wise enough not to wrap his story with a fairy tale ending. The performances of 86-year-old Loren and 14-year-old Guy and the rapport they generate make this one worth a watch. It's rare to see a woman Loren's age in a leading role, but this one makes clear that there was far more than beauty that made her the first woman to win the Best Actress Oscar in a non-English role. A nomination for The Life Ahead wouldn't be a stretch. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman.
We literally get down on our hands and knees and start slowly sifting through the leaf litter, looking for bits of hair or a little chunk of bone.
Tom Gable is tracking a predator. In fact, he's tracking a whole pack of them.
Oh, it's very much like a crime scene investigation.
Since 2015, the University of Minnesota conservation biologist has used GPS collars to track 30 wolves inside Voyageurs National Park. Those collars led Gable and his team to kill sites. And there, amid the leaf litter, were bloodied bits of fur and bone, clues about how wolves alter the ecosystems they live and hunt and kill in. The long-term study is, in a way, a quest to broaden a science story that goes back 25 years. For wildlife ecologists, the story of the reintroduction of wolves to the greater Yellowstone ecosystem on January 12, 1995, has become canonical. The story goes something like this. As the elk grew to fear the wolves, they changed where and how they foraged. That gave willows, cottonwoods, and aspens a better chance to grow near streams. It also meant more riverside berries for foraging grizzly bears. And it led to alterations in the flow of those streams, sending water in new directions. Wolves outcompete coyotes for access to prey, so coyote populations plummeted, which led to a rise in fox, rabbit, and ground-nesting bird numbers, and so on. Ecologists call this row of biological dominoes a trophic cascade.
Regardless of your inclination, I think it's hard not to be like, wow, this is amazing, right? If that is true, that's really incredible.
New findings cast some doubt on the idea that wolves primarily regulate the greater Yellowstone ecosystem through fear and intimidation. And regardless of the situation there, very little research has been conducted on this question in ecosystems that don't resemble the mountains and grasslands of Yellowstone. Which brings us back to the boreal forests of northern Minnesota, and the ground that Tom Gable and his team have been crawling over the last few years. During the winter, wolves work together to kill large prey like deer. But Gable found that in warmer, ice-free months, wolves focus on smaller prey like newborn deer fawns, and especially beavers. And that's where things get really interesting for the ecosystem.
Wolves, by preying on dispersing beavers, alter where wetlands are created.
If a young beaver gets killed after leaving home, it will never have a chance to build a new dam. Even if it had started construction before becoming a wolf's lunch, the dam will remain unfinished and fall into disrepair. Beavers are ecosystem engineers, so when a wolf kills one, it can have a big impact.
Because they prevent beavers from converting a forest into a wetland. And in that regard, wolves are then connected to all of the ecological processes that are associated with wetlands and beaver ponds.
Ecologists have long assumed that predators can influence their ecosystems in two main ways. One is through fear and intimidation, like in the Yellowstone story. The second is through direct killing. The Voyager's wolves offer up a third possibility. The park and the forests surrounding it have more than 7,000 beaver ponds. Gable estimates that wolves have a direct impact each year on around 88 of them. That's a mere 1.25% affected. So it's hard to argue that wolves are responsible for reshaping the ecosystem in the broadest sense. But it's equally hard to deny that they help to maintain a diversity of habitats across the landscape.
But I don't really think that estimate is a key finding, so to speak, because I think the real goal or the real point of our paper was simply to flesh out this mechanism of how wolves do this.
The study was published in the November 13 issue of the journal Science Advances.
This is something worth studying, and this is likely happening in a variety of ecosystems.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Pardon me, what does the Constitution say about pardons? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Constitution provides the President shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. A pardon forgives someone for a crime. A reprieve, that is a commutation, reduces the penalty, but leaves the guilty plea or guilty verdict unchanged. Note the phrase, for offenses against the United States. The President's pardon power applies to federal crimes, but not to state offenses. That said, the pardon power is broad. It covers all federal crimes and may include, most degree, offenses not yet known or charged. For example, President Gerald Ford's broad pardon of former President Richard Nixon came before Nixon was charged with any crime. So, the Constitution gives President Trump wide authority to pardon allies, friends, families, cronies, which leaves open this question. Can Trump pardon himself? Remember, the Constitution gives the president the power to grant pardons, and the word grant means something a person bestows on someone else. But no president has ever tried to pardon himself, so I grant the president this. If Trump were to do that, it ultimately would fall to the Supreme Court to decide if he could. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day that Congress passed the 18th Amendment, which outlawed the transportation, manufacture, and sale of alcohol. The amendment went into effect 13 months later. According to John Rumbarger, author of Profits, Power, and Prohibition, the temperance movement centered on tightening social control of working people. Workers often met in bars and saloons to unwind after work and to socialize. But in the days before union halls, the saloon also doubled as a headquarters where workers could talk about problems on the job like mistreatment and poor working conditions. They used the saloon as a place to plan and organize strikes. It also served as a site for workers to talk politics and organize around political parties. Many prominent industrialists complained that saloons were breeding grounds for labor unrest and radical politics. They also feared a growing immigrant working class that tied its fate to powerful political machines like those in Chicago, New York, and Boston. The anti-saloon movement brought a strange mix into its coalition. It included the KKK, who worried of the growing power of immigrant workers. But it also included progressives, who worked for labor harmony and sobriety as a means of public health. The anti-saloon movement also targeted German brewers. The United States had just entered World War I, and anti-German sentiment was so high that many considered German breweries to be working for the Kaiser, their product a sap on the energy of servicemen and grain production to feed the U.S. troops. But alcohol flowed freely throughout the 1920s, creating both the jazz speakeasy and bootlegging syndicates. It would ultimately be repealed by 1933.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
We are in the midst of probably the worst stretch since COVID-19 first appeared. In Southern California, ICU bed capacity is full. 379 COVID deaths were reported in California on Thursday, topping Wednesday's total of 293 deaths. More than 3,500 new COVID deaths were reported in the United States on Wednesday, a single-day record. Donald Trump, still horrifyingly the president of the United States, hasn't commented on it, either in person or in his mendacious Twitter stream. Equally infuriating is the fact that he hasn't commented on the massive alleged cyber attacks from Russia, the scope of which seems to increase as authorities learn more each day. Senator Mitt Romney spoke about the inexcusable silence and inaction from the White House.
A cyber hack of this nature is really the modern equivalent of almost of Russian bombers reportedly flying undetected over the entire country. And they didn't drop bombs, but they had the capacity to show that our defense is extraordinarily inadequate, that our cyber warfare readiness is extraordinarily weak, that they think so little of our ability to fight back from a cyber standpoint that they do this with impunity. So our national security is extraordinarily vulnerable, and in this setting, not to have the White House aggressively speaking out and protesting and taking punitive action is really quite extraordinary.
After a statement on Thursday from the cybersecurity arm of the Department of Homeland Security about the scope and severity of the hacking, President-elect Joe Biden warned that his administration would impose, quote, substantial costs on those responsible, saying, quote, a good defense isn't enough. We need to disrupt and deter our adversaries from undertaking significant cyber attacks in the first place. And he added, I will not stand idly by in the face of cyber assaults on our nation. The suspected Russian hackers that targeted numerous federal agencies appear to have accessed the networks of the Energy Department and the National Nuclear Security Administration, which is in charge of America's nuclear weapons stockpile. The cyber attack used malware distributed through SolarWinds' Orion network management program, a flaw discovered by the cybersecurity company FireEye, who then publicized it last week. Dozens of federal departments and agencies were infiltrated in the attack. The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, acknowledged the incident in a Thursday threat announcement, saying that it'll take months to uncover the extent of the attack and that the perpetrators may be able to access government systems in other ways. They added that those responsible may have used, quote, tactics, techniques, and procedures that have not yet been discovered. Questions are also lingering about how long the breach went undetected by the U.S. government. Some reports say that this started in March. And when President Trump, who has stayed silent on the matter, may address it. Stay tuned. We've now reached the end of a week-long extension that Congress passed without a spending bill to fund the government past midnight. And the geniuses in Congress decided to combine both that omnibus bill, which would keep the government open through October 1st, with a new and much-needed COVID-19 relief bill. The latest reports say that Congress will likely remain in session through the weekend working on this. Meanwhile, President-elect Joe Biden announced another historic cabinet pick, this time nominating Representative Deb Haaland of New Mexico to head up the Interior Department. If confirmed, she'll be the first Native American to helm such an agency. The choice was hailed by progressives, though there is one sticking point. Tapping Haaland for Interior Secretary is likely to leave Nancy Pelosi with a very, very slim 219-seat majority for much of the first part of next year. That's a one-seat margin to get bills across the floor until those seats can be filled again. Meanwhile, Biden also announced his pick to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. Michael Regan, currently North Carolina's secretary at the Department of Environmental Quality. If confirmed, Regan would be the first black man to run the EPA, which was signed into existence in 1970 by former President Richard Nixon. In other encouraging news, a Food and Drug Administration advisory panel on Thursday recommended authorizing emergency use of Moderna's coronavirus vaccine. The 20-0 vote with one abstention cleared the way for FDA approval, which is expected on Friday. Moderna's late-phase trials concluded that the two-dose vaccine was 94% effective. They expect this month to deliver 20 million doses of its vaccine, which doesn't require special freezers like the Pfizer vaccine does, hopefully making it available to more people in rural areas. And finally, the Court of Arbitration for Sport on Thursday banned the use of Russia's name and flag at the next 2 Olympic Games and at World Championships over the next 2 years as part of a long-running case accusing the country of state-ordered tampering of a testing laboratory database in Moscow. Wow. The World Anti-Doping Agency initially issued a 4-year ban, with that being cut in half by the court on Thursday. Russian athletes will still be able to take part in next summer's Tokyo Olympics and the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, as long as they have not been implicated in doping. Alrighty then. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the upper 40s, and might be a little bit cooler than that. Sunshine and clouds mixed throughout the day, winds light and variable. Very, very small chance of precipitation. Mostly cloudy skies overnight with lows in the upper 30. Winds will remain light and variable. An increasing possibility of rain overnight. Mostly cloudy skies tomorrow, Saturday, with highs in the low 50s, winds light and variable, and continuing with a small chance of precipitation, though we are expecting about, a half to 3/4 of an inch on Monday. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stand at 5,117, with 54 deceased. These numbers have been sporadic as they've come in. They were a bit lower, but we had missed a day or so, and I don't know if this is cumulative cases from the days missed. But we are still increasing our coronavirus infections, and deaths are increasing as well. Pollen right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index in the region is good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.37 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles. I should say that we do have a fog advisory, a dense fog advisory in the region. And the relative humidity is appropriately at 98% when you have that much fog. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 53 and cloudy. Paris is 52 and sunny. Rome is 57 and sunny. Kyiv is 32 degrees with snow grains. Kabul is 34 with its winter smoke. Hong Kong is 54 and clear. Tokyo is 41 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and sunny. And New York is a very chilly 28 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Those anonymous worker bees, this time at Reuters, bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Iran's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency said today that they rejected the UN atomic watchdog chief's suggestion that reviving Iran's nuclear deal after a new U.S. administration comes to power would require striking a new agreement. In an interview with Reuters yesterday, Thursday, Rafael Grossi, who heads the IAEA that polices Iran's compliance to the 2015 nuclear deal, said there had been too many breaches by Iran for the agreement to simply snap back into place when U.S. President-elect Joe Biden takes office next month. Biden has said the U.S. will rejoin the deal if Iran resumes strict compliance. After Trump quit the deal in 2018 and reimposed U.S. sanctions, Iran responded by breaching many of the deal's restrictions. Presenting any assessment on how the commitments are implemented is absolutely beyond the mandate of the agency and should be avoided, Kazem Garibaldi, Iran's ambassador to the IAEA in Vienna, said. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, architect of the 2015 nuclear deal with six powers, has repeatedly said Tehran's nuclear steps were reversible if the U.S. lifted sanctions and fully respected the pact.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Elizabeth Binu and Michelle Rose bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. President Emmanuel Macron tested positive for the coronavirus yesterday, Thursday, prompting a track-and-trace effort across Europe following numerous meetings between the French leader and EU heads of government in recent days. Macron, who will turn 43 on Monday, is running France remotely and has gone into quarantine at the presidential retreat in La Lanterne, close to the Palace of Versailles, the presidency said. A presidential official described Macron as tired and having a cough. His wife, Brigitte, tested negative but was also self-isolating. In the evening, Macron spoke to a conference on French foreign aid policy via video link. Dressed in a roll-neck sweater and suit jacket, the president sat behind a desk and wore a face mask showing no visible signs of the illness. The diagnosis was made following a PCR test performed at the outset of the first symptoms, Macron's office said, declining to give further details of his condition or the symptoms he had. Macron will cancel all upcoming trips, including a December 22 visit to Lebanon, where he has led international efforts to resolve a deep-rooted political crisis. Closer to home, Macron's COVID-19 infection spurred other leaders to take their own tests. Macron joined all but two of the EU's 27 leaders at a summit in Brussels late last week to discuss climate change. The presidential official said it was almost certain Macron was infected at the summit, given the timing of his symptoms. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.